Hey everybody, Resident Loser Jeremy here, and I'm just sitting here in the lounge today kind of editing some tracks that I need to get through for some projects, and I wanted to talk about this piece of software that I had the chance to try out and I really dug. Now this is not a sponsored video. I'm doing this with my own money. No one asked me to do this sponsorship. I don't think they would anyway. Anyway, so this is about solemn tones. I always want to say Solomon tones. Solemn tones, I believe. ODIN II. And get ready for the eye rolls, because every virtual instrument typically does something like that. But let me give you a scenario and why this seems like a really good idea to me. A group that does not live in this country, or at least parts of them don't. Parts of them? No, parts of the band. Individuals from the band. There we go. So not everyone lives in this country, let alone in my general area to come and do pre-production. So what we have is a band who I guess used to do a whole lot of playing together. I think they said some of these songs are like 15 years old. So the demos I got they sounded like they were 15 years old. I mean, they were really good demos for what they were, but now the multi-tracks of this project just simply did not exist. So getting into recording this, I had to figure out a way that I could kind of take this apart, and that meant re-recording basically everything. What this started was the drummer was just going to come and do drum tracks over what they had already had, thinking there was another engineer involved. Typically when a band comes to me for overdubs, there's already another producer, there's already another mixer. I'm just fixing this one issue right in front of me, giving them the files, and they go on their way. Well, that quickly turned into, hey, we want you to mix this, hey, we want you to do this. So starting digging into these things, we realized there are no other files. That's it. These are the demos. So I had to come up with a way to take 15-year-old songs that I could not get other than a really, really rough demo, put that onto a grid somehow, then replace each individual instrument. Now the issue I could run into, this is a female singer. These songs 10 to 15 years old, voices change even in smaller amounts of time than that. So I wanted to come up with a way to do this that I could easily change the key on the fly if I had to. Now, I could have gone and recorded all these guitars. They're not particularly hard parts, but what could really come back to bite me in the butt is if we get to doing the scratch vocal tracks and then we find out that this is no longer in the correct key for the singer. So ODIN solved that issue for me. I could go in here, I could record passable guitar tracks that the drummer could track to, that the bass player could track to, and that the singer could be practicing with all the way through to make sure these were in the right key. And I'm glad I did it, because it actually turned out some of these were not in the correct key. And I would have had to completely restart. It would have derailed the whole process. And these guys are, like I said, they're not from this country, so it would have made a whole lot more expense for them. So in that case, something like this was an indispensable tool. Let me show you kind of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so let's get into kind of how I used it. Not bad, right? I mean, nobody would like to think of the idea that a computer could replace us as guitar players, but for what I needed, this was fantastic. And let me show you why. I have the original here. Let's take a listen just to show you what I got. So not bad for brainstorming 15 years ago, right? I mean, this is fine to give me an idea of what's happening, but I can't break this apart and really get in and change things. Not knowing if the key is going to work for the singer, I have to be able to change the key quickly, and that's what MIDI allows me to do. I can come right in here, and ta-da, I dropped it a half step. But we're not going to do that, so. Do you know what that means? That means we need to reset our buffer. So if that ever happens to you and it sounds like Pro Tools is going through a blender, just reset your buffer. So let's take a listen to one of these soloed real fast. I mean, that's pretty cool. So here's what Odin is doing. I have Panned Rhythms Essential. Now, that is basically, there's a couple different Panned Rhythms Essential, and then there's Panned Rhythms Expanded. From what I know, from what I think I understand at least, the Essential is only going to load samples that you would typically use on like 75% of everything you would need. And a lot of that includes, if we go here to the info, the different key switches that you can do. Tremolo, harmonics, tapping, alt picking, down picking, up picking, alt mutes, down mutes, and up mutes. So there's a lot of other things in here like percussive chugging. We're not doing gent, so this doesn't matter. Scrapes, I don't necessarily need that. I did need it on another song, so I did have to upload the other one. And it is much more CPU intensive. So it's kind of nice to be able to do this and be able to kind of decide how much CPU I want it to take up or not. So I had 5 songs road mapped in a day, which is great for pre-production. It was awesome, and I'm not clever when it comes to software instruments whatsoever, so that says something. Humanized, this was great. I didn't want the band to really have to worry like, is this software, dude, this sounds terrible. Honestly, it doesn't sound too bad if you program it fairly well, and there's some quirks about how programming this can make it sound a little more natural. Getting it on the grid basically to 100%, and then unless you want pauses in the sound, like that, unless you want actual pauses, you want to make sure that, like as you can see here, all of them run into each other. You don't want them to overlap. So let me show you what happens here. So here, all of them, basically what I would do is select these, quantize, and I know you could just go and change it. So we're going to change duration, set the overlap or the gap to 0. And that's how you, so if you apply that, they're all going to get set to 0. So it's going to make sure that there's no gap at all between where the note stops and then where the next one starts. And that's pretty helpful as far as how the program decides how the hand is moving, or how the virtual hand is moving. And all I'm doing for the rest of these, I'm using ToneForge Misha Mansour, the bulb, and it just sounds pretty cool. Now if I bypass this, you'll hear what Odin sounds like. It sounds like a really good DI, and that's pretty cool because then you can kind of do whatever you want, and I'm not beholden to just use that amp all the time. I can do whatever I want. I can reamp it through a real amp, which I might do. I don't know. I'll probably end up putting real guitars on this because it's not about making this sound like a record. It's about how useful this is in pre-production. And then the flexibility of this, you can actually write lead lines. I mean, that sounds pretty good. And again, it's going through just ToneForge. So I mean, now listen to the whole thing in context here. Of course, man. The benefit here, like once I'm done programming these, I can just freeze them. So if you need to do pre-pro and it is really hard to get the band to come in, and I would definitely tell you to pick this up. If you have any kind of controller, honestly, I did most of this with the mouse, just kind of tapping in the notes. And then once you get there, it's pretty easy because most of the stuff is built around bar chords, right? So you're just going basically a fifth up. And if you need to change those chords, it's pretty easy. Now that sounds really weird because it's a melody based on what you've already heard. So it's going to be out of key in some spots, but it's really that easy. And that's it. Honestly, like if you wanted to, you could get in here and kind of change the way this is working, like quantize. Say we want to introduce some kind of random things. Now the program will do that for you, but if you want it to be a little sloppy, so just introduce a little bit of slop. And that's where you have to go back in and change the duration, change the gap to 0. And even that sounds more human probably, and I might do that to the rest of them. But when you do that, you have to make sure that the end of a note doesn't go into the beginning of another one. Otherwise, it's not going to fire the right way. I think this is a fantastic program. This is a side of things that I rarely get to work in. So when I was presented with this kind of unique issue that I had to solve, I was really happy there was a solution out there that was pretty affordable. I would definitely check it out. I know there's been multiple iterations of what this is, and it seems like this is a company that really stays up on updates and is really all about their stuff. I think they have some drum programming. Okay, I'm not a programming minded person. Drums seem a whole lot more complicated to me than guitars. I'm a guitar player. That's the world I come from. So this was a little easier, especially when deciding like key switches and stuff. Like, no, if I have to do that for a drummer, man, please don't make me do that. That sounds awful. If you guys want to check it out, check out Solemn Tones. Go to Odin. Go pick it up. It's worth it. I think it sounds great. Would I make a record with this? No, but I think you probably could and get away with it, especially if you know how to program any amount better than I do. So anyway, hey, Resident Loser Jeremy here. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy. See ya.